The biggest thing we're always looking at with all of our programs is how can we make them more empowering and more dignified. But more of our recent focus has been making sure that we're reaching everybody who needs assistance. So we've started mobilizing a lot of our service. Transportation for our clients can be really hard. It's hard for people to get to us. Maybe they don't have a car, so they have to take public transportation, or maybe they can't afford public transportation and we're too far away to walk, or maybe they do have a car and they just can't afford the gas to get to us. So we want to continue to reach out and see how can we get to those people.
Hello, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Eric Chakowski. I'm one of the worship directors here at First United Methodist Church, Richardson. And with me every week on the podcast is one of our associate pastors, Josh Fitzpatrick. Josh, good to talk to you remotely again.
Yes, back at it. It is good to talk to you. And, as soon as I think we're getting used to this, I find myself in the garage again.
But back in the garage.
Like we said last week, I'm thankful that we have the technology at all to be able to have these conversations remotely. So this is the new reality.
Absolutely. Well, we are in the midst of Holy Week. This episode has dropped on Wednesday. Tomorrow, Thursday, is Maundy Thursday, and Friday this week is Good Friday. These are holy days that we observe in the church, and our church, even in the midst of this different kind of season through COVID-19, is still really passionate about the worship experiences and encouraging folks to participate in those. So for both of those evenings, there's a 4 p.m. and a 7 p.m. live stream opportunity on our website. And at 7 p.m. for both of those evenings for Maundy Thursday and Good Friday, you'll also find them on Facebook Live. We'd love for you to join us for those days. And then, of course, Easter Sunday, we know that even when we are sheltering in place, that resurrection is still a truth in our life, and we will celebrate that this coming Sunday. So we will still have our regular 9:45 traditional and 11 o'clock modern services streamed on our website and on Facebook Live.
If you've been joining us on Sunday mornings, you've heard us talk about, during the past few weeks, an organization called Network of Community Ministries. Network is an organization that we are very proud of at First Methodist Richardson because some of our own church members were very vital in getting it off the ground in the first place. It's an organization that is on the front lines of helping people in our community who are in need here in Richardson. Now, I also want to point out that both of the interviews you'll hear on today's episode were pre-recorded before our shelter in place. And so we're really excited to have a conversation to begin with the Director of Programs from Network, Kaylan VanPelt. Today on the podcast, we are thrilled to have somebody from our community who is doing a lot of great work here in Richardson. This is the Director of Programs at Network of Community Ministries. Welcome to the show, Kaylan VanPelt.
Thank you.
It's so good to have you here. I just want to kick things off by hearing a little bit of your journey of what brought you to this position as the Director of Programs.
So I completed my graduate work at the University of Denver a couple years ago now, and am originally from this area. And so my husband and I wanted to move closer to family, so we made a 2-week decision. We picked up and we moved, came back here. And I knew for a long time that I wanted to do nonprofit work. My heart has always been for poverty alleviation. And even though I grew up in the area, I'd never heard of Network of Community Ministries. And it just happened upon my search when I was looking for a job, and I'm so grateful it did. So I've been with the organization almost 4 years now and have been able to see a lot of growth and change in it since then.
That's excellent. Well, welcome back to town. We've talked a little bit about Network. We had Cindy on a previous season, Cindy Schaefer, the president of Network. But would you remind our listeners what Network is and the kinds of work that you do for the community?
Right. So Network is a nonprofit serving low-income families in our community. It was founded 35 years ago. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But meeting the basic needs of low-income families in our area was founded by a group of churches that got together. They had individuals coming to their doors seeking assistance for food, clothing, shelter, and realized that if they pooled their resources, they could better meet the need. So that's where we started. Today, we're continuing to meet the basic needs through food, clothing, financial assistance. But we also take our programs a step further. We have stabilization programs such as our Pathways case management program, walking side by side with our clients, financial education, GED classes, ESL classes, and a number of other services we offer to not just help meet that emergency need, but also get them out of poverty, out of the cycle.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things about Network is foundationally, kind of at the core, that y'all really do work to meet basic needs, but it's a much more comprehensive approach. Once those basic needs are met, that there's further steps to be taken. I think that's a beautiful thing. So tell us a little bit more about your specific role as the Director of Programs. What does that look like?
So it's kind of changed over the years as we've grown. When I started there, we had a staff of about 4 or 5. Now we have a staff of about 10, plus some AmeriCorps Vistas that help. So my role has changed a lot and become a lot more focused. But I get to oversee all of our client services. So I get to make sure that they're functioning as they should on a day-to-day basis. But also I get to envision and dream about the direction that I hope our programs can take and the different services that we want to offer to our clients. I get to build that out and be part of a team that makes it come to fruition.
I know one of the things that I've been impressed with Network is your philosophy for providing assistance and seeing the people that you're helping as real people. Can you tell us a little bit about the way that you have shaped your food pantry, for example, and the way that that recognizes the personhood of the people you're assisting?
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest programmatic changes I've been able to be part of. When I started at the organization, our pantry worked in a system that our clients would come in through the door. They would get a piece of paper that just kind of had basic food items on it, and they would check off like, I want this or I want that. But they would never actually go into the pantry. Our volunteers would just take that list and go shopping for them. And a few years ago, probably 3 years ago, we realized that we were pretty behind the curve and that this wasn't the most dignified way to serve our clients. And we're always looking through all our programs at how to increase dignity and how to empower our clients through them. So we decided to go self-select, and that has even evolved over time. But we knocked down a bunch of walls. We increased the size of our pantry. We got new equipment, new shelving units, new refrigeration to make it look like a grocery store. So now our clients are actually able to go through and shop for the items they want. And then this past year, we took it a step further that not only do they go and shop through, but now they get a card. We just call it their food card, and it has network dollars on it. So just fake currency that they can use, and every item in our pantry has a price on it, so they can decide how they want to budget. Do they want to spend all of their network dollars on one visit? Do they want to come back every week? Just the dignity and the choice to kind of decide how to buy their groceries.
I love that. I think that's so neat. Now, another thing that has kind of made you unique, particularly in recent months, and one of the things that has put you in the limelight here in Richardson was your incredible response to the relief efforts after the tornado in October. I'm curious, your response was so incredible. Was that something that you had prepared for, or was it something that because the need was there, Network just kind of stepped up and brought it to fruition as it came?
So we are close partners with the city of Richardson, and we had worked with their emergency management team in the past to find our place in a natural disaster of how we could help. But I don't think we were really prepared for what that would look like. And in all transparency, I wasn't at Network during the time of the disaster. I was out on maternity leave. But the team really stepped up and met the need as it came on. I mean, day one, I got a call from Cindy saying, hey, the power's out at Network. And then by day 2, I hear that there are just droves of people coming and seeking assistance. So they, amongst still keeping standard operations running, started this whole new operation of serving families who had been impacted by the tornado, making sure that everybody was placed, that they had food and clothing and essentials like houseware, things that we don't normally even deal in with assisting. But they did amazing work, and they made sure that every single one of the individuals who came to them was placed and had shelter. And we still continue to serve some of those families today. Some were Network clients already. Some were not. They were just impacted and heard of us after the tornado. But what it really showed us is that, one, we needed to strengthen our disaster preparedness. And 2, we needed a staff person to do that. So we actually hired one of our AmeriCorps Vistas who was cycling out to come on as our special programs manager. So part of her duties is establishing a plan for the future, making the connections, because volunteers and community organizations were a huge part of the assistance we were able to offer. So making those connections, making sure they're established well in advance, and working with the city to kind of firm up our role in future disasters.
I love to hear any organizations that assess and then work to sort of nimbly look toward the future to see how we respond to an event like this, and maybe even things that are sort of derivatives of these kinds of disasters in the future. And so just, again, really inspiring to hear that you guys are actively really working to make sure that, again, not only in how you care for your clients, but in how you're prepared for events like this. So at the church, we continually look for ways that we can partner with Network, and one of the ways that we've done that is to have food collection bins near some of the doors. Sometimes it's, I think, neat for us to hear a little bit of the behind the scenes in what actually happens to things that are donated to a ministry like Network. And so could you tell us a little bit about when food is collected in those bins, what's sort of the journey that it takes from bin to client?
Absolutely. So when we get our food donations in, which first off, thank you, because we couldn't do what we do without donations like that and support of groups like you guys. But when we get those food donations in, they come in through a loading dock. Our volunteers weigh everything. So everything in our food pantry is weighed in and weighed out, and that's how we track our current stock. We are beholden to all of the health safety codes that a grocery store or restaurant would be. So we have to check for expiration to make sure that the food is still quality. We check the cans for dents. A lot of people don't know this, but there's a special seal inside of a can that if it's dented in a certain way, it compromises the safety of the food. So if it has certain dents, we can't use it. And then once we check it for food safety, we put it right on the shelves. And then our clients get to make the choice, like I said, of how to spend their dollars if they want to get that item or not. Some items we have in greater quantity. Those items go in our warehouse. We have kind of two sections to our pantry, the pantry area and then the warehouse section that holds all of the extra stock. So our volunteers will stock the shelves as items come in. But one of the great things we get from churches that do donations is variety. So we're a partner with the North Texas Food Bank. We do get a large percentage of our food from them, but there's not a whole bunch of variety. There's a lot of standards. But when we get stuff from you guys, that's where the variety comes in. So it very rarely even goes into the warehouse. It just kind of goes right onto the shelves.
Gotcha. So I know we have several people from our church who volunteer at Network on a regular basis, and we're about to hear from one of those people in the second half of this episode. But I'm also curious, what do the needs for volunteers look like at Network? Are there needs for an occasional volunteer, or are there just needs for volunteers who can do so on a regular basis?
We need volunteers in every capacity. So as I mentioned, we have about 10 staff members now, but we have 200 to 230 volunteers every week that come and run our programs. And those are what we call our regular volunteers who commit to a 3-hour shift every week. We always have a high need for those volunteers, but we know that not everybody can make that type of commitment. Some people can just come in as they have free time, or maybe even just once, and that's okay too. We need people who have a couple hours here or there to come in, and we always have a need. I can't guarantee it will always be the same need, but there's always something to be done.
So if I want to volunteer, the easiest way to find out how to volunteer and what the opportunities are is to visit where?
We do a volunteer orientation every Thursday at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
You don't have to register. You can just show up.
I can find the address at your website, I'm guessing, which is what?
www.thenetwork.org.
Thenetwork.org.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So as you look to the future and as you and your team really dream about the impact that Network can continue to have on the community, how in some ways is that the same, and maybe in what ways does that look different?
Right. Like I mentioned, the biggest thing we're always looking at with all of our programs is how can we make them more empowering and more dignified. So we'll continue to do that with all of our programs, not just our food pantry. But more of our recent focus has been making sure that we're reaching everybody who needs assistance. So we've started mobilizing a lot of our service, and that has started with our food pantry. We now partner with 4 RESD schools and provide mobile pantry services to them on a monthly basis. So our truck goes out once a week. We hope to see that continue to expand and continue to grow and to be more than just food, to also be able to offer case management and clothing and other necessary items at these pantries. Because as we've gone, we've had students and counselors and teachers come to us and say, hey, this is great, but we also need help with this, or we're also going through this other crisis. So continuing to mobilize, continuing to meet our clients where they're at. Transportation for our clients can be really hard. It's hard for people to get to us. Maybe they don't have a car, so they have to take public transportation. transportation, or maybe they can't afford public transportation and we're too far away to walk, or maybe they do have a car and they just can't afford the gas to get to us. So we want to continue to reach out and see how can we get to those people.
That is so cool.
Wow.
So cool. Well, we have one question here on the podcast that we ask every guest. At this point in your life, what is one thing you wish someone would have told you?
Oh, man. I guess I just wish I would have known that, like, life doesn't have to take just one set certain path. There's a lot of things that I thought I would be doing or wouldn't be doing at this point in my life that I am, and some of them are really great. But I think you go in, especially, like I mentioned, I just finished school not too long ago. You go through school and you think, like, okay, this is where I'm going, and here's where I'm going to end up, and it just doesn't work like that. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
I think that's a beautiful thing, too. Kaylan, it's been so great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing about the work that you do with Network. Such a great organization that we're honored to partner with, and we appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. Like I mentioned, we are so grateful for your church's support, and we couldn't do it without churches and individuals like you guys.
We're glad to do it.
Thanks again. I just really love how Kaylan talks about the way that they serve the people in our community, not just in a way that addresses their needs, but they're doing it in a way that dignifies them as a person. And the creative ways that they've been able to do that is just really inspiring.
It was such a joy to speak with Kaylan. Now we have an opportunity to speak with one of our own church members who volunteers regularly with Network. We're excited to introduce Bonnie Edwards. Well, we are thrilled to have Bonnie Edwards in the studio with us today. Bonnie, thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
I'm happy to be here and very honored to be asked.
You've been a member at First United Methodist Church Richardson for a while. Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you to our church in the first place?
Sure. We moved here December of 75, and we started looking around at different churches. And we visited several, and we kind of kept coming back to First Methodist. It was on Beltline at the time. We liked many things about it. The girls were in 3rd and 6th grades when we moved here, so the children's department was important. They had a good library there. I had started a nursery school for our church previously before we moved here, so I was interested in the programs that they had, and we liked the preaching, and we just grew in the church. Whatever the girls were involved in, then I helped out with. I believe that everybody has to do their part because that's the only way anything gets done. It can't be done by one or two people. It has to be everybody does a little bit here and a little bit there, and we can go forward.
And so you've been a part of the church ever since. We are entering this year of service where we're emphasizing different service opportunities to connect with our community. And exactly what you just said, it takes everybody pitching in. One of the things that you've been pitching in on a regular basis is your role volunteering with Network of Community Ministries. Would you mind telling us about that?
Sure. My involvement with the Network has really been just in the food room. Time-wise, I felt that that was the only thing that I could do. And it's grown a lot. There's basic things you have to know and keep the shelves stocked and help the guests that come in. When you have a chance to meet and talk with the clients, you get to know them as people and try to help them out. Sometimes it's trying to get them to try a different product so that it's not familiar to them. But gee, have you ever thought of taking a baked potato and then putting a can of chili on the baked potato, and it's really a great meal for lunch. So just trying different things. You know, when you have white hair, you have a little more experience with with trying to manage a budget and trying to make your food dollar go a little further. And last week, I had an experience of helping a visually impaired person who could not read the product, couldn't tell anything about it. So that was just really a great opportunity to verbally take him through the food room, and he told me what he wanted. I told him what was available, and let's go look at this, and I would put it in his hand, and he would feel it because he had to know what the product was when he got home so he could put it in the refrigerator or the pantry or whatever, and he would go by the feel of the product. And he knew mentally, he was very aware of what we were putting in the basket, and he had limited time to shop, and he had limited space to store things at home. So he was very astute into what his purpose was for that particular day.
So you've told me you volunteer, is it every Wednesday?
Yes.
And you like to brag that the Wednesday group in the food pantry is the best. Now, what makes the Wednesday group at Network the best?
Wednesday morning, we have a pretty stable crew, and a lot of incoming food comes in. A lot of people shop, and it goes out. And we are clicking, and we are working.
Well-oiled machine.
We stock when some other shifts aren't as good at that. So
Okay.
we're really working and pushing it out.
Now, do you
So
have friendly competitions against like the Tuesday shift or the Thursday
I
shift?
don't even know who's on the other shift.
They don't even matter.
We work as a team, and everybody helps, and we've had several new people. Younger people have come in, which is wonderful because they have good ideas, and of course they're much stronger. There's no way I can lift these things that often we have to do. So
And you've been working on that Wednesday shift for how long?
almost 15 years.
15 years. That's
Wow.
awesome. And so I'd imagine 15 years of volunteering with Network has had some sort of impact on your faith. Can you speak to that a bit?
When you can look somebody in the eye and help them out, that's a really positive feedback. And a lot of it is just every day, just trying to help people grow and learn.
You talked a little bit about an experience you had last week, but in your 15 years, is there a memory or an experience that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Oh, gee.
Or
15
a couple?
years. When you have a really good experience, you share it with your team, and you go home and you say, gee, thank you, Lord. It was a great day. I was able to help somebody. So you just appreciate those. We are here for such a short time on this earth that if we can help somebody else, why not? I mean, let's just do it. Live well, laugh often, love much. I try to keep that as something to be mindful of every day.
Well, I almost hesitate to ask this question now because that was such a good adage for us to live by. But Bonnie, you've mentioned, and we've spoken before about the fact that you've listened. Is it every episode you said to the podcast?
I haven't missed any.
Wow.
You know, I might not hear it on the day. I
Sure.
haven't seen any for this year yet, but I might not be looking in the right place.
Well, we are, as we speak, recording for this season, so you'll
Okay,
be a part of
okay.
that. So you know what question is coming, but let me ask you this. At this point in your life, what is one thing that you wish someone would have told you?
Well, people have told me, enjoy your children. They grow up so quickly. And I thought, well, sure. You know, life goes on. You keep moving. But as you have more white hair on your head, you realize that time has really grown up. And my children are 53 and 56. And my grandchildren are 24, 26, and 28. So life has just whipped by me. I try to live each day to the fullest, try to do whatever I can each day. And I say, thank you, Lord, and put my head on the pillow and go to sleep.
Well, thank you so much. I know we are inspired by your intentionality. And here at the church, we are so blessed to have your presence. And I know Network is blessed to have you volunteer there on a regular basis as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
I always find it so informative and inspiring to hear comments and stories really from both sides of an organization like Network. We had an opportunity to hear from Kaylan on the more programmatic and administrative side of things, and then also from Bonnie, who, like so many of us, have opportunities as volunteers to serve with this great organization. And it actually dawned on me that that's sort of been a theme that's been pervasive throughout season 4, to hear from both sides of those experiences, and that's been really enlightening and, again, inspiring for me. With this episode, we come to a close with season 4, but before you get really sad about it, we want you to know that season 5 is already in the works. We've already recorded some interviews for that, again, pre-shelter in place, but we will have new content and new episodes coming to you soon. So we really want you guys to stay tuned and, again, subscribe to the podcast so that you keep up to date on when those new episodes are coming out.
Now, over the course of our Lenten podcast series here, I think as we've been talking about the year of service that we're engaging in as a church, one passage that keeps coming back to mind is 1 John chapter 4. I love 1 John chapter 4 as it talks about the love of God that dwells within us and just flows through us as we love those that God calls us to love. And so I want to leave you with a passage that I think really summarizes what we've been trying to talk about during season 4 and highlighting these different organizations that love people with the love of God. This is 1 John 4, verses 9 through 12. God's love was revealed among us in this way. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. In this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the atoning sacrifice for our sins. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we also ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God lives in us, and his love is perfected in us.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. If you like the podcast, please feel free to share it, go online and leave a comment, or give us a rating so that others might hear about us. This is the last episode of Season 4, but we still want to encourage you to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss information about Season 5 coming soon. If you want to find out more about First United Methodist Church Richardson, you can find us online at fumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Kaylan VanPelt and Bonnie Edwards for joining us this week, and make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for Season 5. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.